They stole my $40,000 inheritance and gave it to my sister, but I got the last laugh. And then, cleaning out my childhood room was supposed to be simple. I was back in Cedarville for the weekend, helping my parents get ready to downsize, though let's be honest, I didn't have much of a choice. My mom, Patricia, called it preserving memories, with that syrupy sweet tone she always used to hide her real motives. What she really meant was, "You're going to do all the work while I oversee things. Rebecca, don't forget the back of the closet," she called from downstairs. Her voice carried through the old house like nails on a chalkboard. "Got it, Mom," I yelled back, shoving a dusty box toward the door. I glanced around what used to be my room, though it hadn't felt like mine in years. The bed frame was still the same one I'd had since I was a teenager, but the mattress was stripped bare, covered in junk my parents didn't feel like putting in the attic. The walls were still that same faded blue I'd picked out when I was 15, but every poster, every trace of my old life, was gone. Now, it was just a storage unit for their extras, old vacuum cleaner attachments, Christmas decorations, even some of Amanda's old trophies. She'd always been the star child. And me? I was the one they always counted on to clean up the mess. I sighed, pushing another box toward the door before turning my attention to the closet. It was a disaster. Clothes, boxes, random knickknacks. It looked like it hadn't been touched in a decade. I crouched down and started sorting through everything. I was halfway through tossing old shoeboxes aside when I noticed something weird. At the back of the closet, near the floor, the baseboard didn't quite meet the wall. There was a gap, just barely visible, but enough to catch my attention. Frowning, I ran my hand along the edge. My fingers caught on something. A piece of paper, maybe? Curious, I pulled it out. It wasn't just any paper. It was an envelope, yellowed and crinkled with age. My name, Rebecca, was written on the front in delicate cursive. I froze. That handwriting was unmistakable. Grandma Louise? I whispered under my breath. Grandma Louise had passed away nearly 6 years ago. She wasn't the type of grandmother who baked cookies or told bedtime stories, but she was always kind to me. She had a way of seeing right through people, especially my parents. My heart raced as I held the envelope. Why would she have written me a letter? And why would it be stuffed in the back of a closet like someone didn't want me to find it? I sat down on the floor, my legs suddenly feeling shaky, and tore the envelope open. Inside was a folded piece of thin stationery, just as yellowed as the envelope itself. I unfolded it carefully, my hands trembling. The date at the top caught my eye first, March 12, 2009. Exactly 2 weeks before she passed away. Dearest Rebecca, if you are reading this, then your parents have failed to honor my wishes. I blinked, my stomach dropping like a stone. Failed to honor her wishes? What did that mean? I set up a college fund for you. $40,000 in total. This money was meant to help you build the future you deserve, to help you shine in a family where I've seen your light dim far too often. I've watched how your parents favor Amanda. They have their reasons, but it isn't fair to you. This money is yours. I hope it gives you the chance to chase your dreams. Love always, Grandma Louise. I reread the words at least 5 times, my pulse pounding in my ears. A college fund? $40,000? My parents always told me we couldn't afford college, that we were just getting by. I believed them. I didn't question it when they said Amanda had to go to an out-of-state university because she had potential. I didn't argue when they said the family needed me to work. I'd been pulling double shifts at the diner since I was 20 while Amanda chased her dreams, and now this letter made everything unravel. They lied to me. Not just lied, they stole. Rebecca? What's taking so long? My mom's voice snapped me out of my spiraling thoughts. I shoved the letter into the back pocket of my jeans, my heart racing. Just found some old papers, I called back, forcing my voice to sound casual. I needed time to think, to process what I just discovered. But time wasn't a luxury I had, not with Patricia breathing down my neck. I grabbed another box and pushed it toward the door, my mind spinning. $40,000. My grandma had left me a chance, and my parents took it. I thought about all the double shifts I'd worked, how I dragged myself home at midnight smelling like grease and burnt coffee. I thought about every time Amanda came home from college with her shiny new bags and stories about her amazing classes. And me? I'd put my dreams on hold because it's what the family needed. Except it wasn't. They didn't need me to sacrifice anything. They just chose Amanda over me, again and again, because to them, she was worth it and I wasn't. I clenched my fists, my eyes burning. I couldn't think about this now, not with my mom hovering. I dragged the last box to the door, forcing myself to breathe. When I finally carried everything downstairs, Patricia gave me that tight, fake smile of hers. "Done already?" she asked, like I just finished a fun little project instead of uncovering the truth they'd buried for years. "Yeah, just about," I said, keeping my voice steady. Tom was sitting at the kitchen table, glued to his phone as usual. Amanda wasn't even there, probably off with her friends living the life they'd handed her on a silver platter. "Well, thank you for helping," Patricia said lightly, already turning her focus to setting the table for dinner. "Sure thing, Mom." I managed a weak smile and slipped into the bathroom. Locking the door, I pulled out the letter and stared at it, my hands still shaking. They stole from me. I didn't know what I was going to do, but one thing was certain. I couldn't let this go. Dinner that night felt like some cruel joke. The kitchen was exactly as I remembered it growing up, perfectly set placemats, the smell of overcooked green beans wafting from the stove, and my mom arranging everything like we were about to have a holiday feast. It was her thing. Pretend everything was perfect no matter what. I sat at the table, my stomach twisting itself into knots. Tom, Dad, was scrolling mindlessly through his phone like always, and Patricia was humming softly to herself, completely unfazed. Amanda wasn't back yet, probably out with her college friends, enjoying her life on the money that should have been mine. The letter sat folded in my back pocket, burning a hole straight through my resolve. I couldn't let it go. I'd spent all afternoon replaying everything. The nights at the diner, the times I gave them my last $20 so they could pay a bill, the way they praised Amanda for every little thing she did while my work ethic was just expected. And now this? A stolen college fund. I couldn't sit on it any longer. The table was finally set, and Patricia called Dad over with her signature clap and cheery voice. He sat down with a grunt, still glued to his screen. I stared at my plate, barely able to look at them, but I had to bring it up. If I didn't, I'd explode. We started eating. The silence was so heavy it felt like I was choking on it. Finally, I set my fork down. My hands were shaking, but I kept my voice steady. "I found something interesting while I was cleaning today." Patricia froze mid-bite, her fork halfway to her mouth. Dad's phone screen dimmed as he looked up, his eyebrows raised. "Oh," my mom said lightly. "What did you find?" She kept her voice syrupy sweet, but there was tension in her shoulders now, tight and pulled back, like she was bracing for something. I swallowed hard and said it. "A letter. From Grandma Louise." The room shifted. I watched my mom's hand grip her fork a little too tightly, and my dad suddenly set his phone face down on the table. "A letter?" Patricia said, her voice just a little too casual. "Your grandma always did love writing. It was about a college fund," I continued, my eyes on her. $40,000. The knife clattered against Patricia's plate, the sound sharp and jarring in the quiet room. Dad cleared his throat and looked down at his plate like it had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the world. $40,000? I repeated, louder now, because no one was saying anything. "She said it was set aside for me, to help me go to college." Patricia's smile didn't return. Instead, her face went pale, and she pressed her napkin to her mouth like she was stalling for time. Dad finally spoke, but his voice was weak. "Rebecca, college is expensive. You have to understand. We used the money where it made the most sense." I stared at him, incredulous. "Where it made the most sense? You mean Amanda's tuition?" Patricia finally spoke, her voice sharp now. "Amanda had potential, Rebecca. She earned her place at that university, and we did what we had to do for the family." "For the family," I repeated bitterly. "No, you mean for Amanda. What about me? What about my future?" "You had other options," Patricia snapped, her tone defensive now. "We've all made sacrifices, Rebecca. Amanda worked hard for her success, and we had to prioritize. Prioritize. I slammed my hand on the table, the sound echoing through the kitchen. My heart was racing now, and I couldn't stop the words from tumbling out. You let me work double shifts at the diner for years. You told me there was no money. I gave you half my paycheck because I thought I was helping the family survive, and all along, you had my college fund. You stole from me. Don't be dramatic, Patricia shot back, her voice shaking now. We did what we had to do for Amanda's education. She's going to make something of herself, and I wasn't? My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I wasn't good enough for you? Is that what you're saying? Before Patricia could answer, Amanda walked in. She was dressed to the nines as always, her designer bag slung over her shoulder, her hair done perfectly. She froze for a second when she saw the scene in front of her, then smirked like she was walking into a TV drama. What's going on? She asked, dropping into her seat and pulling out her phone. Your sister is being ridiculous, Patricia said sharply, looking to Amanda like she was some kind of ally. I'm being ridiculous? I turned to Amanda, the heat rising in my face. Grandma left me a college fund, and Mom and Dad drained it to send you to your dream school. Did you know about it? Amanda glanced up, raising an eyebrow, then shrugged. A college fund? For you? That's news to me. I didn't believe her for a second. How could you not know? $40,000 doesn't just disappear without someone noticing. Relax, she said, rolling her eyes. Even if it's true, what does it matter now? You wouldn't have done anything with the money anyway. It's not like you were on track to be a doctor or something. That was it. That was the final straw. Are you kidding me? My voice shook, but I didn't care. I didn't get a chance to do anything because they stole that chance from me and gave it to you. Amanda looked taken aback for a split second, but she quickly recovered, shaking her head. Whatever, Rebecca. You're overreacting. My mom finally spoke again, her voice cold now. We made decisions that were best for the family, Rebecca. Life isn't fair. You should know that by now. I pushed my chair back, the sound scraping loudly across the floor. No, I said, my voice low and trembling with anger. What you did wasn't for the family. It was for Amanda. You chose her. You always have. Patricia didn't look at me. Dad just stared at his plate, silent and useless as ever. Amanda had already gone back to scrolling through her phone, like the whole conversation wasn't even worth her time. I grabbed the letter from my pocket, slapped it down on the table, and looked at all of them. Grandma wanted me to have a future, and you took it from me. I hope it was worth it. No one said a word as I turned and walked out of the room. My mom called weakly after me, Rebecca, don't make this a big deal. I didn't look back. I didn't trust myself to. I stormed up to my room, slamming the door behind me and pacing back and forth, my chest heaving. My mind was racing, my hands shaking, and I felt like I was going to explode. For years, I believed them. I trusted every lie they fed me about why I couldn't go to college, why I had to give up my life to help them. And all along, they'd stolen from me. I sank onto the edge of my bed, my head in my hands. This wasn't just favoritism or unfairness. This was betrayal. And I had no idea what I was supposed to do now. Aunt Deborah's house was about 20 minutes outside Cedarville, nestled on a quiet street lined with overgrown trees. Her house was exactly as I remembered it, small and cozy, with a pale green porch and wind chimes that jingled softly in the morning breeze. Before I could even knock, the door opened. There she was, Aunt Deborah. Her graying hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, and she wore a sweater 2 sizes too big, like she'd just rolled out of bed. She looked me up and down with that sharp, perceptive gaze of hers, then smiled warmly. Becca, honey, you look like you've seen a ghost. Come in. The second I stepped inside, I felt like I could breathe again. Her house smelled like vanilla and old books, and the faint sound of classical music played from somewhere in the back. She led me to the kitchen table, where a plate of freshly baked muffins sat waiting. Sit, she said, already pouring me a cup of tea. And start talking. You look like you need it. I sat down, pulling Grandma Louise's letter from my bag and sliding it across the table. I found this yesterday while cleaning out my room. It's from Grandma Louise. She left me a college fund. $40,000. Deborah's face changed instantly. The warmth in her eyes dimmed, replaced with something colder, harder. She picked up the letter, read through it, and let out a long sigh as she set it down again. So you finally found it. I blinked. What do you mean finally? Deborah leaned back in her chair, folding her arms across her chest. Your grandma told me about this years ago. She was worried, Rebecca. She knew your parents had a habit of redirecting things for Amanda. My stomach dropped. You knew? I knew about the fund, yes, she said gently. But I didn't know what your parents had done until after she passed. I stared at her, my hands shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Because Louise asked me not to, she replied. She made me promise not to interfere unless you found out on your own. She wanted you to be ready. She said you'd need the strength to stand up to them. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So you just let them steal it? Deborah winced but didn't back down. I didn't let them do anything. I trusted Louise's judgment, and you know what? She was right. Look at you. You found the letter, and now you're here. You're ready. Ready? I didn't feel ready. I felt angry and betrayed and completely overwhelmed. I looked at Deborah, my voice shaking. Is there proof? Anything I can use? Deborah's expression softened, and she stood up. Wait here. She disappeared into the back of the house and returned a minute later carrying a thick manila envelope. She set it down in front of me with a heavy thud. Your grandma didn't leave anything to chance, Deborah said. These are copies of the bank records, the letters she sent to the trustees, even a recording of a conversation she had with your parents. I stared at the envelope, my hands frozen in place. A recording? Deborah nodded. She knew what kind of people they were, Rebecca. She wanted to make sure there was proof in case something like this happened. My heart raced as I opened the envelope and started pulling out the documents. The first thing I saw was a series of bank statements, regular deposits going into the account for years. The balance grew steadily until it hit $40,000. Then, 3 months after Grandma Louise passed, the entire account was drained. Amanda's tuition, every last penny. My hands shook as I flipped through the records, the truth staring me in the face. It wasn't just a suspicion anymore. It was real. They stole from me. They lied to me. And they didn't even feel guilty about it. I looked up at Deborah, my vision blurring with tears I refused to let fall. They stole it all. Deborah reached across the table, resting her hand on mine. I'm so sorry, Becca. I wanted to tell you. I wanted to stop it. But Louise believed in you. She believed you'd find this when you were ready to fight for yourself. Before I could respond, there was a loud thud outside. Deborah's face hardened, and she turned toward the window. I followed her gaze, my stomach sinking. A car had just pulled into the driveway. My mom's SUV. They followed me, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Deborah stood up, her face set with determination. Let me handle this. The front door burst open before she could even reach it. Patricia stormed in first, her face red and furious, followed by my dad, looking uncomfortable and guilty as ever. Rebecca, Patricia snapped, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. We need to talk. I stood up slowly, squaring my shoulders. My mom's eyes darted to the papers spread across the table, and I saw her face pale. You mean these? I said coldly, gesturing to the bank statements and letters. Patricia opened her mouth to respond, but Aunt Deborah stepped between us. You don't get to come into my house and start making demands, Patricia, she said firmly. This is family business, my mom hissed. It doesn't concern you. Deborah raised an eyebrow. It concerns Rebecca. And right now, that's all that matters. Patricia turned her glare back to me. Rebecca, you had no right to dig this up. You don't understand everything we've done for you. You mean everything you've done for Amanda? I shot back. My voice shook with anger, but I didn't care. You stole my future. You lied to me for years, and you think I'm just going to let it go? My mom's face turned redder, but before she could respond, I grabbed the envelope from the table and shoved it into my bag. We're done here, I said, my voice low. You need to leave. The room fell silent. My dad looked at me, then at the floor, and Patricia's jaw tightened like she wanted to argue. But Aunt Deborah didn't move, and neither did I. Finally, my mom turned on her heel, storming out the door with my dad trailing behind her. The second they were gone, I let out a shaky breath and sank back into the chair. Deborah sat across from me, her expression soft. "You did good, kid," she said. "That wasn't easy." "No," I whispered. "But it's not over yet." I didn't expect them to back off quietly after that showdown at Aunt Deborah's. If anything, I should have known my parents would double down. They'd spent their entire lives controlling me, manipulating me, making me believe I owed them everything. The next morning, my phone blew up with texts from Patricia. At first, it was guilt-tripping nonsense. "Rebecca, I can't believe you embarrassed us like that. We're your parents. We did what was best for you. You don't understand how hard we worked to keep this family together." When I didn't respond, the messages shifted to anger. "You're acting like a spoiled brat. Grow up. You think you're so much better than us? You'll regret this, Rebecca." And then came the most ridiculous one of all. "We've calculated the cost of raising you since you turned 18. You owe us $12,000 for rent, food, and utilities." I stared at that last message, laughing bitterly to myself. They had stolen $40,000 from me, money meant for my future, and now they wanted me to pay them back for the privilege of being their daughter. I blocked her number. The first step toward breaking free was finding a place of my own. Living under their roof wasn't an option anymore. Every time I walked past Patricia in the kitchen or saw Tom, slouched on the couch, pretending to be oblivious, I felt that burning anger rise in my chest. I couldn't look at them without seeing what they'd done to me. Luckily, I had been squirreling away money in a secret account for years. It wasn't much. I'd never made more than minimum wage at the diner, but it was enough for a deposit on a studio apartment on the edge of Cedarville. The place was a shoebox. A single room with creaky floors, a barely functional kitchen, and a bathroom so small you could brush your teeth while sitting on the toilet. But when I stood there, holding the keys in my hand, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: freedom. I spent the next few days sneaking my things out of my parents' house bit by bit. Clothes, a few books, the old laptop I'd saved up for when I was 19. I didn't say a word to them about my plans, and honestly, I don't think they even noticed. Patricia had been sulking since the confrontation at Deborah's, and Tom was still glued to his phone, pretending the whole thing didn't exist. On the fourth day, I was just about ready to leave for good when Amanda decided to show up at the diner. I was behind the counter wiping down tables when I heard the familiar jingle of the bell over the door. I glanced up and froze. Amanda stood there in the middle of the diner, completely out of place in her tailored coat, clutching her expensive designer purse. She looked like she had just stepped out of a catalog, her hair perfectly curled, her expression perfectly smug. "We need to talk," she said, sliding onto a bar stool like she owned the place. "I'm working," I said flatly, turning back to the counter. "That's fine," Amanda replied, unbothered. "I'll wait," I sighed, dropped the rag I was holding, and leaned on the counter. "What do you want, Amanda?" Her expression softened, like she was trying to be sympathetic. It was fake, and we both knew it. "Mom's been a wreck since you threw that fit. Do you have any idea how much stress you've put her under? She had a panic attack last night." I blinked at her. "Not my problem." Amanda's fake concern evaporated in an instant. "Not your problem?" Her voice rose slightly. "Rebecca, they're struggling because of you. They took out a second mortgage to cover my tuition, and now they're behind on payments. They were counting on your rent money to help with the mortgage." I stared at her, my hands clenching into fists. "My rent money? You mean the money I've been giving them for years that they never told me was paying for your tuition?" Amanda scoffed, clearly offended. "It wasn't just for me. It was for the family." I let out a hollow laugh. "The family? Right. The same family that told me we couldn't afford college while they handed you everything. You're so selfish, Rebecca." Amanda snapped, her voice dripping with frustration. "All they ever wanted was for us to succeed. And now you're ruining everything because you can't let go of some stupid college fund." I leaned in closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear me. "They ruined everything when they decided I didn't matter. You think I'm selfish? Look in the mirror, Amanda. You took everything from me, and you don't even care." Amanda opened her mouth to fire back, but I didn't give her the chance. I turned my back on her and walked straight to the break room. I pulled out my phone and sent one simple text to my mom. I'm moving out. Moving day came faster than I expected. I packed the last of my things into my old beat-up car, not bothering to say goodbye. Patricia was in the kitchen, pretending to ignore me, while Tom sat in the living room, staring blankly at the TV. Neither of them said a word as I walked past with my bags. For a moment, I paused in the doorway, looking back at the house I'd grown up in. It felt strange to leave without ceremony, without a single word of acknowledgement, but it also felt right. I got into my car, started the engine, and drove away. The studio apartment was nothing special. The floors creaked, and the windows rattled when the wind picked up, but it was mine. I dragged my mattress up the narrow staircase, set up a small table I'd bought at a thrift store, and dumped my clothes into a plastic storage bin I was using as a makeshift dresser. That first night, I sat on the floor with my back against the wall, eating cold pizza straight from the box and staring at my new reality. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was carrying the weight of my parents' expectations on my shoulders. Of course, they didn't stop trying. Patricia's texts started pouring in again the next day. You're breaking this family apart. Are you happy now? You'll never make it on your own. You think you can survive without us? I ignored every message. Over the next week, I focused on getting my life together. I looked up night classes at the local community college, trying to figure out a way to start over. I made a tight budget, cutting corners wherever I could, so I'd have enough to enroll. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was something. For the first time, my future felt like it was in my own hands. But of course, they weren't done with me yet. One evening, just as I was settling onto my second-hand couch with a stack of apartment listings for fun, there was a loud, insistent knock at the door. When I opened it, my heart sank. There they were, my mom, my dad, and Amanda, standing in the narrow hallway like they had come to stage some kind of intervention. Patricia looked furious, her eyes wild, while Tom just looked tired. Amanda, of course, had that smug expression she always wore when she thought she was winning. This ends now, Patricia said, shoving a folder of papers into my hands. What is this? I asked, already feeling my anger rising. It's a bill, she snapped. Everything we've spent on you since you turned 18. Room, board, utilities. You owe us $12,000. I stared at her, my hands shaking as I clutched the folder. You've got to be kidding me. Tom spoke up then, his voice weak. We invested in you, Rebecca. And this is how you repay us? I laughed bitterly, the sound hollow. You stole $40,000 from me, and now you want me to pay you for the privilege of being your free labor? Unbelievable. Amanda rolled her eyes. They did what they had to do. You wouldn't understand. I stepped forward, my voice shaking with rage. No, Amanda. I don't understand how you can stand here and pretend like you're the victim when I gave up everything for you. Patricia opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. Get out of my apartment. I'm done. The three of them stood there, stunned, before Patricia finally turned and stormed off, Amanda trailing behind her. Tom lingered for a moment, like he wanted to say something, but I didn't give him the chance. Out, I said again, my voice firm. He sighed and followed them down the hallway, leaving me standing alone in the doorway. For the first time, I felt free. I closed the door behind them, locking it, and leaned back against the wood, letting out a shaky breath. My heart was racing, my hands trembling from the confrontation, but I felt a strange calm settling in. They were finally gone. All their demands, their manipulations, their guilt trips, they stayed on the other side of that door. For the first time, I had drawn a line, and I wasn't stepping back. I sank down on the couch, staring at the folder my mom had shoved into my hands. The absurdity of it hit me all over again. They really thought I owed them money for raising me. I flipped the folder open and scanned the scribbled list inside. $300 a month for rent, $150 for food, $75 for utilities. They had itemized every single thing like I was some tenant freeloading in their house. The nerve of it. I threw the folder onto the coffee table, where it landed with a slap. My breathing slowed, but the anger burned on. How had I let it get this far? How had I spent so much of my life believing that this was normal, that their lies were just family sacrifices? That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay awake in my too small bed, the dim glow of the streetlight filtering through the curtains. I thought about everything, every double shift, every paycheck handed over, every time they told me there just wasn't enough for me. My mind drifted to Amanda. She had been smug at the door, as always, so sure she had one. Maybe she really believed that I didn't matter, that I was the one who had failed, not her. Maybe they all believed that, but I didn't. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a fire in my chest that hadn't been there in years. I was done being the afterthought. I wasn't going to let them define me anymore. I grabbed my phone and started searching. For years, I'd pushed college to the back of my mind, told myself it wasn't possible, that I'd missed my chance. But now I wasn't going to let anyone stop me. I found a program at the local community college that fit my schedule, business classes at night, part-time so I could keep working at the diner. It wasn't fancy, but it was a start. Later that afternoon, I drove down to the admissions office. The campus wasn't much, just a handful of brick buildings and a small quad where a few students lounged on the grass, but it felt like something new. I walked into the office with my head held high. "I'd like to enroll for next semester," I said, my voice steady. The woman behind the desk smiled warmly, handing me a stack of forms. "Welcome to the beginning of your next chapter." Her words stuck with me as I sat at my rickety kitchen table that night, filling out paperwork by the glow of the cheap lamp I'd bought at a thrift store. For the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. The future wasn't something my parents or Amanda got to decide for me anymore. Of course, they didn't stop trying to get their claws back into me. A week later, as I was finishing my shift at the diner, I spotted Patricia sitting in the corner booth. Her hair was frizzed, her face tired, but she still carried that air of superiority. She'd been waiting. I groaned under my breath and wiped my hands on my apron before walking over. "What are you doing here?" She looked up at me, her lips pressing into a thin line. "We need to talk." "I don't think we do," I replied, crossing my arms. "Rebecca, don't be like this," she said, softening her voice like she thought she could guilt me. "You're tearing this family apart." I didn't even flinch. "No, Mom. I'm just refusing to let you tear me apart anymore." Her face hardened, and for a moment, I saw the mask slip. "You think you're better than us now? You think you can survive on your own? Let me tell you something. You don't know how hard life is. You'll come crawling back." "No, I won't," I said calmly, meeting her gaze. "You made sure I knew how hard life is when you took everything from me. I'm not coming back, Mom. Ever." Her mouth opened like she wanted to argue, but I didn't stick around to hear it. I turned and walked back to the counter, leaving her sitting there alone. That night, I sat in my little apartment with my college forms spread out in front of me. My phone buzzed on the table, a new text from Amanda. "You're being ridiculous, Rebecca. Mom's falling apart. You need to apologize." I stared at the message, shaking my head. It was just like Amanda to assume I was the one in the wrong. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned my phone off and shoved it into a drawer. They could scream, they could guilt trip, they could blame me for the rest of their lives. It didn't matter anymore. For the first time, I wasn't looking backward. I was looking forward.